Hello and welcome to Beyond Markets, where we bring you up to speed on development outcomes in Africa. I'm Kenneth Igbomor, and thank you so much for joining me on the show. Today, we'll look at regional integration and how railways can unlock Africa's development despite the COVID-19 pandemic. You can join the conversation on social media. Let us know what you think. The hashtag to use is Beyond Markets, and let me know what you think about the topics that we discuss. My handle is at Kenneth Igbomor. Now, no doubt the COVID-19 pandemic has been the black swan event of the year as it continues to redefine everyday life across the world. But Africa cannot afford to hold back its development strides as the continent still has a huge infrastructure deficit to plug. Now, South African freight and railway company Thelo DB recently signed a Memorandum of Understanding with the government of Ghana to develop a rail project that will foster regional integration. The chairman of Thelo DB, Ronnie Ntuli, joins me now to share more details on this deal. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today, Ronnie. But let's first take a step back and look at what kind of year we've had. You know, the bleak economic outlook we've seen from the World Bank, from the IMF, a deep recession expected, and looking at Africa's infrastructure deficit and talking about the COVID-19 pandemic in all of this. I'd like just to hear your thoughts on all of this first.
It's a really complicated year for us as a continent, and I think for the world in its entirety, obviously. However, our own view is that it represents a unique opportunity for the continent of Africa. All these complexities again point to and re-emphasize the urgent need for us to invest in, one, infrastructure, and two, industrial capacity on the continent. We have to, as a continent, catch up with the backlog of industry and infrastructure. We have, as a continent, moment lively for African. We have to avoid Africans crossing over deserts and oceans to go and look for employment elsewhere when we have opportunity to bring development to our own continent. And our own view is certainly that this provides us a great opportunity to recalibrate. We are back end of the investment curve in those two super sectors, and the time is now, certainly.
Interesting viewpoints there, and they're talking about taking advantage of the opportunities that this whole pandemic presents, despite the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, let's get back to that deal, and let's backtrack first to November last year, where we had that deal signed at the African Investment Forum, and then let's walk our way back to the recent deal we just heard from Ghana.
As you may be aware, let's take a little bit further back. In November 2018, we entered into an agreement with the leading global railway company, Deutsche Bahn, DB, originally out of Germany, but present around the world, full spectrum of railway capacity from concept all the way to operations and maintenance and everything in between. The reason for that partnership was to bring best of global capacity to the continent of Africa in the development and operations and maintenance of railways. Very importantly for us, we also have aspirations of building an African cadre of railway experts. So what the partnership with DB also offers us is the ability to, beyond the hard technical expertise and experience of over 180 years, is the capacity to train Africans. So we have committed that in countries where we work with, we will train local African people in the full spectrum of railway, from train driver all the way to executive training programs, so that we build a real cadre of railway experts for this century, not what railways was a while ago. So that's an important commitment for us. Fast forward, what we also realized, having established Thelo DB, which is an African railway company, we also realized that the ability to mobilize capital is very important. Capital is the railway sector is a very capital intensive sector, beyond it being technical intensive. So we've been obviously in discussions with a couple of financial institutions, and as you mentioned, at Africa Investment Forum 2019, we signed a Memorandum of Understanding with the Africa Export-Import Bank, And the terms of that MOU is that we will bring the technical capacity to develop and modernize railways on the continent as Thelo DB. Afreximbank would then support mobilization of capital into those projects in order to support relevant governments. What it then means, forgive me, what it that means is that we bring the full capacity to develop, to conceptualize, develop, operationalize any bit of railway infrastructure, no matter how big. And we also then have the capacity to mobilize the funding for those projects.
Rightly said. I would definitely love to get into the financing of this, how it's going to play out. I understand that you're in the recent one deal in Ghana, you're working with the African Development Bank and also some local partners in Ghana as well. I'd like to know how that partnership is going to work out.
So again, us being an African company, Thelo DB, we also believe in the value of local participation. In Ghana, we are working with a group called Transtech Consult, which is an engineering company. They've done a number of projects on the ground in Ghana. We will likely create a local company. Again, we believe in local content. For us, it's not a forced issue, so to say. We really do. We believe in working with people that understand the country a lot better than we do. And Transtech has brought great guidance to us in terms of the needs of the country that is Ghana and the imperatives. And that way we work together to develop these projects. The relationship is intended as an equity relationship. They'll participate in the form of equity. We take a lot of guidance with them. Although we bring technical capacity and we bring funding, we get a lot of guidance in terms of functionality on the ground in Ghana. But also beyond that, and very important to us, is that they're technical experts. It's an engineering company, as we said. So that's on the partnership with our colleagues at Transtech on the ground. Obviously, together we then work with the government of Ghana to try and move the project forward. From a financing point of view, what we advocate, generally speaking, is that we pursue projects that are commercially viable. Commercial viability is very important to us. So generally speaking, what we try to do is that the project should be funded on a ring-fenced basis, where the government doesn't necessarily have to dip into the fiscus to fund these projects. We work to try and fund them based on freight demand that exists on the sort of pathway to the corridor.
But on this Western Corridor railway line in Ghana specifically, I'm trying to understand what it is you're going to be doing. You're going to develop the railways. Are you going to enable finance as well? And also, are you going to operate and see that it's going to keep going on? I'm trying to understand the nature of your involvement and how it's going to play out over time.
Got it. Yeah, so we've been engaged with the government of the Republic of Ghana, who have been incredibly responsive, and we're very, very excited about the prospect of working in Ghana and working with the government of Ghana. So there is what we call a brownfield project. There's an existing railway line called the Western Corridor. Ghana has, as you may know, existing infrastructure capacity for railways and for ports. But the demand is much bigger than is being serviced today. So there's more freight needing evacuation than there is capacity today. So what the intention is we will then mobilize the financing, deploy technical capability. We can carry a railway project as Thelo DB from concept, as I said, all the way to operations and maintenance. So in this particular project, obviously, we have to consolidate the feasibility study to make sure commercial viability. From there, we will carry the project through designing. We'll do the project management. We'll oversee the EPC to make sure that it's to quality and to standard. We will then do the testing and commissioning. We'll do the operation maintenance over the period of time that the government of Ghana grants us. And we'll train Ghanaians as we mentioned. And within that, obviously, we have to structure and finalize the financing for that whole value chain, including later on operations and maintenance.
All right, then Ronnie, I need you to hold that thought for a second. I'll just take a quick break, and definitely when we return, we'll get to hear more about this exciting project happening in Ghana. I've been speaking to Ronnie Ntuli, is the chairman of Thelo DB. Beyond Markets continues after the break. Welcome back to Beyond Markets. If you're just joining us, Ronnie Ntuli, the chairman of Thelo DB, has been telling us about an exciting railway project happening in Ghana. And Ronnie, before the break, you were just talking about how the level of engagement you're going to be having with Ghanaian citizens and how you're going to be creating jobs for them. Can you speak more on this? And also, I'd like you to speak specifically on if we're going to be seeing more skill transfers happening in Ghana in that project.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ken. I think there's the world is filled with precedent of the railway sector development and the jobs that it creates. It's heavy engineering. It requires a lot of expertise. Inevitably, it'll create jobs in the countries where we're doing projects. In Ghana, in this case, we anticipate that obviously it'll create a huge number of jobs directly in the development of the project, but also sustainably in the longer term in the operations of the project and also in maintenance of the railway corridor over that circa 270 kilometers. That's the first part. The second part is that the value chain of railway development is quite immense. It stretches back to steel. So directly and indirectly, it'll inevitably create a number of jobs, both in terms of development of below rail infrastructure and what we call above rail infrastructure. We will have to mobilize a lot of partners to execute on a project of this nature. Some international and hopefully many also domestically in Ghana. So the sort of consequential job creation we think also has great prospects. Training is something that we emphasize enormously. Commercially, the business model doesn't make sense for us to import a whole lot of expatriates. It's better to have people on the ground trained and developed. So with our partners Deutsche Bahn, they have extensive capacity and experience in training people within the railway sector. They've been doing this for many, many years. They have an institution called the Railway Academy. And generally they work with tertiary institutions, set up syllabus for training and development. But we anticipate that we would have to train a lot of people to be able to run and manage a project of this scale.
I was also very keenly interested in, because I understand the nature of the work you're trying to do, trying to connect Africa's trading corridors through rail. And I'm trying to understand what your experience has been with dealing with regulators across the countries.
The regulatory environment is very important. So railways is a very unique sector. It has proven itself over many, many years around the world, over centuries, in fact. I think the reason I say it's a really exciting time is that we're spending a lot of time engaging with a number of governments on the continent, with regulators that oversee the transportation sector and specifically. We find genuinely, and this is the primary reason for our excitement, is we're finding very fertile ground. We're finding that African governments have an excitement about the railway sector. I think there's a real recognition that railways will connect countries, will connect regions. I think there's a recognition that railways can form an important backbone to the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. And governments on the ground are really spending time with us, genuinely so, wanting to implement, not only talk about, but to implement viable long-term solutions beyond just constructing railway lines, but making sure that operations and maintenance and that people, there's capacity on the ground to implement those projects and kind of deliver viability, move freight and passengers from A to B. So we are finding really fertile ground. I am ever so optimistic about our engagements with regulators. They're responding in a manner that is allowing us to make advancements. And this project and the way the Ministry of Railways under Honorable Minister Gati have engaged with us, even on this project, has really been very positive.
I want to get to know numbers now. I'm trying to understand first the size of this deal we're looking at here, and also what number of trains are we looking at in total?
Yeah, so what we are busy doing now is we are consolidating. Before our involvement, a number of parties had been involved with semblances of feasibility studies around this project. There are some parties that are doing some of the contracting work on the ground already. What we have to do is consolidate that feasibility study. But the project we anticipate will be circa 2.5 billion US dollars.
I'm trying to also understand the timelines for implementation. So what dates are we looking at here? Is it a year, 1 year, or I'd like you to speak to what the level of duration of the implementation of this project?
Yeah, so the government of the Republic of Ghana has been very focused around ensuring that we don't sit on our laurels. And in this regard, they've given us a very specific time frame to come back with them definitively with the consolidated feasibility study is the first big important step, which we will finalize during the course of this year still. Two, the government of Ghana has asked us to then indicate to them definitively costs and process for implementation. We anticipate that by the close of 2020, God permitting, under this coronavirus environment, that we can have a definitive timeline. I'm happy to come back to you, Kenneth, and sit down and say the time frame for execution of this project is as follows. But we are on a go.
Right, then.
We are certainly on a go, and the government of Ghana is emphatic that there is no opportunity to pause.
Looking at, I'm very happy to see an African railway company, taking such a huge deal as this, and implementing similar deals across the continent. But what has it been like dealing with competition from elsewhere, like China and other areas which usually are the go-to places for most African governments?
We have capacity comparable to, if not better, than the no ifs, no, because our own aspirations as an African company is our as we deserve. We also deserve the global quality. Certainly, we are certain of that. The second point is that the demand for. I think that the argument about is it west or is it east or is it north or is it south that partners with our continent is a futile, especially when it comes to infrastructure. Why do I say that? I say that because if we look at the demand, if you look at the numbers from the African Development Bank, the backlog of infrastructure investment annually touches on circa 130 billion US dollars. We need to mobilize all the capacity technically, all the capacity financially that we can source. We really do, as long as we as Africans are clear on the standard that we want and the parameters for those partnerships. So if there is competition out, we're happy because the railway sector hopefully consequentially catalyze industrialization, regional trade, job and skills development. So we are fine. I think if there's more, absolutely welcome.
All right, Ronnie, I'm still looking at this deal in Ghana, though. I understand part of it also entails modernizing the rail systems in Ghana, and I'd like to know how that is playing out and how it's going to go about.
The consolidated feasibility study is done. We will have a very definitive plan on the state of the current existing infrastructure on that network, both, as we say, below rail and above rail, rolling stock, signaling, track, the full spectrum. We will have clarity on location of freight owners. And what then we will do is we will plan for the sort of freight volumes that will have to be moved on that corridor. Not only now, because when you develop railway corridors, what you also see is the pent-up demand. So we have to develop modernizing the railway line. Not only means that we move the freight that exists today, but also we have elasticity in capacity so that we can service future demand. So we will then work to develop and construct a railway corridor that can take that sort of profile of freight efficiently, effectively. The message that we push quite extensively to African governments is that it's not just about building the railway track. That's one small dimension in railways. A big part of railways is what we call operational efficiencies. We have to make sure that we extract value from that investment. That means we're moving, how many train sets are we moving per day? What sort of volumes of freight are we moving per day in order to maximize operational efficiency? That's our model.
Yeah, because looking at models and working on how you work with governments, whether it's the private, public-private partnerships, going in there, or is it? Do you tweak the models based on the engagement you have with the government, or I'm trying to understand how your models work.
So generally speaking, the model is a PPP. There's public sector participation, private sector participation, and what we emphasize. Which the governments generally accept because of the history of Deutsche Bahn, 180 years, over 180 years experience in railways in all continents of the world, is that there is operational experience. So bringing that experience and allowing it to operate corridors efficiently, the governments really welcome that, and they emphasize that they don't want to necessarily operate the railways, that we with the experience can operationalize the railways. So that partnership works well. The assets, the track is obviously tied down on the ground in country, so that generally speaking is under the ownership of the governments. We really help the governments to extract value in a fully integrated manner out of that investment that is made.
All right, then, Ronnie, definitely quite a lot to look and expect, and I'm going to hold you to your word on the timelines to deliver on this project. I've been speaking to Ronnie Ntuli, he's the chairman of Thelo DB, and that's all we have on Beyond Market today. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. But remember, you can catch the show at 5 p.m. West African time daily and have access to all episodes of Beyond Market on our website. That's at CNBC Africa. From me and the team, enjoy the rest of your day.